Awesome. That's not supposed to happen. Okay, hold on. That's right, stream elements. I am streaming. What does that mean? Why does it say never back down, never what? A. That's right, Falco. A. Oh, look at that. Falco's on vacation. Nice job. How are you enjoying it so far? I, as you can see, am not on vacation. In fact, school starts next Monday, which is great. Or this upcoming Monday, rather. But trying to just like. Because the problem with these glasses, they're the transition lenses, which in the sun it's somewhat okay, but then you get all these things reflecting off it. It's mostly light. It kind of sucks, actually. Let me bump this up a little. I want to be within like talking range, or at least range in which I can talk comfortably, but make sure it's not completely blowing up someone's headset or earbuds or whatever. Or if you're in like a weirdo like me, a car stereo. Because the cool thing about Apple and the cool thing about iOS is that you can sometimes leave it on. You can leave it playing outside of the app and it'll just play through the speakers like nothing. I find it kind of neat, actually. Oh, I should probably put this here. It is a very hot take. You'd be surprised how hot it is, actually. Every month, this pops up. And I'm tired of it. Actually, no, you're right, it is a hot take. Low ink is very boring. Why does Starburst keep winning low ink? We're having another FTC win situation all over again. I think IPL should ban Steve. What else am I gonna do? What are we at right now in low ink signups? Because it was 171 when I last checked. 171? So I probably should have pushed this back a little later, but I'm doing something later on, so I didn't want to. $171, okay. I don't see anything that changes the top 10 yet. Knowing my luck, it might happen. What are y'all's thoughts on mechanical pencils? Like, my only qualm with them is that it's this tiny little bit at the end instead of like a proper sharp pencil. I mean, I guess it makes it a little bit weird to hold, but at the same time, they do make it to where it's basically the same thing. I think. Okay. Oh, this time, I am wearing a proper Splatoon shirt. I don't remember why I bought this, actually. It's neat though. You can even say it's neato. Thought that was a great one. It's a great joke, me. Thank you, me. Hey, hello, Mr. Awesome. Hello. Is Benthic Brigade ready? See, you guys have signed up. Had a little roster shuffle. Where did I put the honorable mentions? Oh, geez, I should probably do that actually. Right, I don't know why I didn't actually write it down in the section that comes before top 10 teams, but you know, hey, whatever. But yeah, as you'd imagine, I had to do a little bit of switching due to recent developments. There we go. Nice to hear, nice to hear. Some good stuff at the Brigade too. Wild take. Look! I'm going to explain all of this in a moment. I put this here. I put that first bullet point there because I see it too often. And sometimes it's from people who don't even watch the link, but it pisses me off so much. And I just realized my glasses are crooked. Don't need those. Anyway. No, I haven't seen this month's link yet, actually. Yeah, that's... Oh, I guess I'm a poser. Damn. I don't know what to do. Oh, the thing. Yes, I am. I thought you meant. I thought that was like a little joke. But yes, I have heard it before. Mainly in the outer corners of Twitter, or I guess X. No, it's Twitter. I'm trying not to be terminally online. Working on it. But no, it mainly happens, and I understand why some people haven't seen it yet, and that's mainly because it happens when big teams get banned. And I've seen it happen, mainly seen it happen whenever I've seen, like, I'm trying to think of team names, because now I'm blanking on team names. There used to be a big exodus. I know it was like when the Ludi div came out, a lot of these new teams got banned, and then they were like, well, Loink's never going to be great again, because all these good teams got banned. And they were always like alpha bracket, consistently alpha bracket qualifiers. But now it's just like, as far as I could think of, the British Reckoning got banned. Which, I mean, I kind of saw it coming. The way they were playing throughout this last month, it was like, okay, no wonder. Trying to think of other teams that got banned. Although I think it's just the British Reckoning that I can note off the top of my head. Hello, Epic. How you doing? You know, the good news is that I finally learned how to raid. And watching my previous podcast episode, I realized I forgot to raid, among other things. But, you know. Second time's a charm. Very tired. I mean, it's been a slow Friday. Second and final time, unless I die. I'm okay with that being my second and final time in that case. let's not reach that part yet. I don't think it'll happen. No, I don't think that's something we'll have to worry about. As we all know, podcast hosts are always immortal. It's been a very slow day today. Apart from doing this whole, like, prep, all this prep, I've got this whole prep journal. Apart from that, it's mainly just been staying inside because I don't want to go outside. It's a little hot, in case you haven't noticed. It's, according to my computer, it's currently 109. Oh, we also have that air quality alert as well. Cool thing is, or I guess not cool, that's really just like a overstatement, but when I woke up this morning to go on my run, what had happened was I thought it was very cloudy outside, but it turns out it was just really bad haze. So I go outside, it looks cloudy, everything looks gray, but it's not gray, it's all just haze, and while I'm running, it feels really, like, bad to run in. It sucks. Oh yeah, I guess that's also a thing, the excessive heat warnings. Oh yeah, those happen. You know, just a common occurrence. Good thing you're in a team called Aquatic Vanguard. I was. Although it makes more sense that I'm now on a team called the Grillers, because I'm getting grilled in here. No, seriously, it's very hot. Jesus Christ. So, shout out to all of my heat warning fans. Any heat warning fans in the chat? Oh, what a totally normal, insane thing to say. Alright. Top of the hour. You know what time it is. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Wherever you're watching this, whether it be live or on a VOD, on Twitch, YouTube, or Spotify. Whether you're complaining about Shiver's Splatfest success rate on Saltoon, or you're calling me a tsundere on your own team's account, thanks Triggerfish Zone Supremacy by the way, or you're trying to find your Sendo opponents in the Sendo server, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. It's hot outside. Probably too hot, depending on where you live. But there's some good news there, is that you get to stay inside. I got to stay inside, and I got to write a few pages out of my journal just to do this podcast. You know what y'all get to do? Y'all get to play low ink if you're not Bandit. But if you aren't, you get a whole weekend to yourself and to other low-level teams where you get to have fun and play to get banned. Remember, this is the one tournament you want to get banned from. Unless you're very toxic, in which case... But, I mean, I don't think you want to go outside and touch grass. I would normally say touch grass because, guess what, we're all competitive Splatoon players, but that grass is probably burnt off by now. So, instead of focusing on how hot it is out and unbearable it is outside, let's go ahead and talk about everyone's favorite time of the month, which is Loink. I'm going to quickly go over some teams to watch, some teams to look out for, some teams I have my eye on. I'm going to go over the top 10, which, as per Popcast tradition, is going to be a top 10. And because I have a lot of teams I listed down here. Yeah, there's like, what, 16 to 17 teams I listed because of how good they can be. It's big. I think it's stacked. But first we gotta get into this one discussion I think I see occasionally. I think I see it once a month, or, well, yeah, once a month, because Loink happens once a month. But sometimes, and I saw it today, maybe not as often as I do other times when you can see a multitude of teams getting banned, but sometimes I will go through Twitter. You'll see this random tweet from some comp splat player who plays Div 4, Div 3, who knows. But Loink is boring because they ban all these teams. There's no good teams around it. Loink is boring. And I guess to some degree, you might have an argument there. Truth is, we're not going to be seeing the same teams play over and over again. We haven't seen Sia in a while because they got banned. And they were very exciting to watch. In fact, I remember all of us following Sia, hoping that one day they get that win. And they finally got the ban they've been looking for. And we followed the same path with Ink Killers back up, I believe it was a year ago. Same path, just waiting for them to finally get that ban. But once they get banned, there's no one to watch. Truth is, Loink is not boring. And I know it sounds obvious. It does to all of you watching, because truth is, you come to this podcast every Friday before Loink just waiting for the predictions to see what Popgun says, to see what he thinks is a top 10. But still someone out there who's going to think that Loink is somewhat boring. Low-level teams just don't play as competitively, or maybe they're not as exciting to watch. It's all a lie. Loink is fun, and Loink will continue to be fun because there's just always going to be a team to watch. There's always going to be a match to watch. And truth is, there's always storylines and all these history that prevents Loink from being boring. Let's go ahead and start with Surf and Turf, which you're going to hear that name mentioned a lot, by the way, so heads up. Surf and Turf has been around for the longest time. I can't even tell you. Surf and Turf has gone to Loink. Actually, last month, finished second place against AK Ping. And they're still trying to get the win. And you see, I go into Rose's tweet, which Rose likes to do this thing where it's the community rankings, seeing where the community ranks all these different teams. Surf and Turf is number one, and I love seeing all the teams getting hyped for Surf and Turf to finally get what they want, because the truth is, they're still pining for the win, and just how strong they've been so far, it's hard not to find that, or not to follow that sort of storyline. If you want another example from like from say Splatoon 2, Turf Cup. Oh, what? Sorry. Yeah, they. No, I'm thinking of another. I'm thinking of Cubata. Oh, right. I was thinking about Cubata. Okay, they did get fourth. I had to read that because I was kind of doubting myself there. I apologize. I am not doing too well in the first 5 minutes, but let's talk about another storyline. Do you guys remember Splatterlot Alpha? Do you guys remember Splatterlot Alpha? Or Splatterlot A Alpha? They were called Alpha for a while, but I'm going to say Splatterlot A because that's what I remember the most as. Splatterlot A versus Yumistar. Yume Star goes into the finals going almost completely undefeated. Completely undefeated. Splatolite comes in being the complete underdog. Splatolite. I remember Splatolite. Splatolite comes in as the underdog, and everyone's expecting Yume Star to just completely... I mean, not everyone, but I remember just thinking to myself saying, Yume Star might win this one. Because again, Splatolite, and before then, Splatolite and all the Splatolite teams that were there then, they all were considered to be sort of like beta gamma level teams. Splatolite comes in, and it's one of the best battles I've seen, I think, in the finals so far. Now, of course, this was back in 2022, so I'm not sure any people are going to remember it as much, but you have to remember that to put it simply, Splatolite just wasn't one of the... Splatolite was, again, that one, like, low gamma beta bracket level team. No one's expecting them to go this far, especially against a team like Yume Star, where they're going completely undefeated throughout Alpha Bracket. This should be an easy one-and-done situation for him. And yet, it's Splatolite's rise to fame, and they win, beating Yume Star. There's all these storylines that happen during Low Inc, and I think that's what keeps it not boring, keeps it exciting for the teams to watch and for players to watch as well. Because even if it happens the day of the tournament, or maybe even beforehand, there's still a lot of build up to it, to where it becomes something that people will come to watch, and people will tune in just to watch maybe even one match. As exciting as that grand finals was. I'm going to go in for a more recent example, Squid Strikes. Watching Rigel? Yes. Watching that sploosh player. And again, this is at a time when I don't want to say complaining, but the most prevalent weapons in most tournaments are going to be Splash, Machine. Actually, no, I don't think Machine was as popular then, because he got nerfed. Splash. No one's expecting Sploosh. Sploosh comes in and immediately just completely slices through the defense. That's why I ended up calling him Full Send Rigel over and over again in chat, because it's a Sploosh player. No one's expecting a Sploosh player. No one's expecting anything other than a Splash, let's be honest. But a Sploosh, there's only one type of player that uses Sploosh, and unfortunately, I have to bring up the name Little Timmy. Little Timmy and Rigel. But Rigel, man, just makes that grand final so much more interesting, because you're using an off-meta pick, and you're using it extremely well. Everyone loves sort of high-level gameplay, especially when it's with a weapon that you just don't see as often. And this is all sorts of storylines that make Low Inc as fun to watch as it is. And you'll see this with many different tournaments. It's always about the storylines. The only thing is that Low Inc gives you more opportunities to see these storylines. Remember, Surf and Turf is one of those teams with lots of history behind them. So now that they're this close to getting that Low Inc ban, they start to get more build up around them and start to get more hype behind them. You start to see these sort of players coming out in support of them. Everyone's saying Surf and Turf number one. I remember Gus making a tweet about, hey, what team do you think will win Low Inc? And just about 80-90% of the replies are Surf and Turf. It's fun to watch, and there's so much to follow. You want a more controversial example? Let's take Bloodwalk. Now, this is when I start to say storylines still matter. And they still make something at least interesting to watch. I like controversy. And it gets people talking about something, because if you want to say Low Inc isn't boring, it is still it's still not, well, obviously not boring. maybe controversial, sure, but there's still a lot to be said about how much Bloodwalk generated. I know this is going to be a hot take, and why I'm bringing this up is it's a very questionable move, but once you consider how much, and yes, negative attention, I get it, but consider how much attention Bloodwalk is getting from all this sort of lag, all this controversy heading into the alpha bracket matchups when they're like all these teams complaining about, okay, well, maybe this is not the best. Well, maybe they're a little laggy. Yes, they are, and quite frankly, they were. Anyway, what I'm saying is there's a lot to be generated here, and especially from controversy. I think controversy, while it does sound like something that shouldn't be brought up, and honestly something that I'm trying to think of the word. Well, I think it's something that shouldn't be brought up, and maybe it's something that shouldn't be seen as a positive light. And believe me, this probably won't be. I think that controversy does lead to people starting to talk about things, and it doesn't no longer becomes boring to the point where, okay, it's just a bad incident, move on. It starts to generate some sort of talk about how this should be built upon in the future and how it should be improved. Now, I'm going to talk about sports for a moment because I think this is very reminiscent of something I saw in sports. So, bear with me for a second. I know sports is a little bit... I know sports, maybe this reference won't come across, but I will try to explain it as much as I can to make it understandable. So, I'm probably going to talk about Formula One here, because I saw a tweet online that said, "What's the best Formula One race you've seen thus far? At least in the past century, the 21st century," and it says Abu Dhabi 2021. Now, I will explain that heading up to this race, there are two drivers. Both of them are equal in points in this one championship standings. And these are drivers' standings, by the way. Both of them heading into the final lap, there was an incident, or heading into the final stages of the race, there was an incident where the race has to be stopped. Now, the race is so far, heading into the final lap, is still under yellow flag, which means that all of these cars are going to follow a safety car until that safety car period ends. Here's the controversy. This has never happened in a Formula One race before, so you have to understand that when the race director calls for that safety car to come in and let the teams race for one final lap, again, this has never happened in a race before. This is a very controversial move. So when you do this, so the race car comes in, the safety car comes in, and there's one lap. You have to remember that both of them are tied up. The only difference is that one driver has a sort of advantage in that their tires are not as worn as the other. So this guy's tires are still fresh. This guy's tires are not. This guy wins by one lap. Now, again, this is very controversial because, again, it has never happened in a Formula One race before. It's very... I see a lot of people saying it's very sketchy because this driver has apparently had a lot of backup using with the governing body of Formula One, which is like... I don't know, that's another discussion of itself, but... Again, it's that controversy that gets people talking about a specific race, and while it may not be, that controversy itself may not be seen in a positive light, it does generate that sort of attention. Personally, I think Loink will not be boring. I think it's always going to be fun, and there's always going to be at least one thing being talked about in every single month. Now, whether that be seen in a negative light or a positive light, it doesn't matter. To my point, it's still going to be not boring. It's still going to be fun, and I get it. Some of the points I brought up are pretty controversial. I still think Loink will not be boring. Now, granted, I did mention they didn't actually change a few things, or it didn't actually change anything after Bloodwalk 1, because why would you? Bloodwalk is a one-time thing. And plus with lag rules, I know Pumpkin brought this up earlier in an earlier episode, but it's very hard to enforce. Because let's say you make a hard specific rule, that opens up Pandora's box. You don't know how you're supposed to enforce that. Or I guess not how you're supposed to enforce that, but when you enforce this, how does that play into something else? Like, I sent the TOs a video of this team being laggy. Okay, we'll allow that. But then another thing comes in. I sent this video, but it shows it in a different way. Like, it's a Pandora's box there. You don't know how much you're set to allow. So, there's not much that can be changed there. My point is, Link is not going to stop being boring, or not going to be boring. I realize how I phrased that now. That's completely against everything I said. Oh man, what a highlight there. But my point is, Link is not going to stop being boring. And I did it again. Link is not going to be boring. Link is not going to stop being fun. There's always going to be something to talk about. And I believe it's just, there's always going to be a storyline, even history, even something that happens day 2 or day 1 is going to be something you talk about maybe for the rest of the tournament. Again, I remember a time when, back in the olden days of, say, 2021, I believe, when Snowfall hit 6-0, and we're all starting to think, hit 6-0 in the group stage, and said, there's a team called Snowfall that hit 6-0 in the group stage, and we're thinking, okay, are they also going to go undefeated here? Which, I mean, if you know Lowink, 6-0 might not mean much when you get to day 2. But I remember me just thinking, okay, how is Snowfall going to handle day 2? But there's always something to be talked about, is my point. And there's always going to be something to talk about. Maybe not the day of the tournament, or maybe not day 1 or day 2. Maybe not in the coming weeks. But there'll always be at least something that's generated. A storyline, an event, something that happens within Lowink or outside of Lowink that builds up to Lowink. That's going to be something we talk about, maybe not just for the weekend, but for until maybe even the next one. And like I said, this usually happens. This usually comes as an argument whenever a huge swath of teams get banned, which if they don't, we still have a lot of teams to look forward to. But even if they do, we still kept going to Lowink and watching these streams over and over again. Truth is, people are going to keep watching these streams, even if large swaths of team keep banned like they have been before. People are going to keep watching it. I'm going to keep watching it because I know it's very fun to watch. Again, you get to see differences in comp that you've never seen before, like I mentioned with Rigel. You get to see storylines playing, like we're going to see this month when Surf and Turf starts playing. And truth is, there's going to be every month there's going to be a team that generates some attention. Now, whether it be negative or positive attention, we don't know. But truth is, it will not be boring. So, enough of that. Let's talk about why Lowink will not be boring in the form of teams to watch and teams to look out for. Let me go ahead and start off with a name I haven't seen. Or, well, I have seen because I'm in their server. But a name maybe we haven't seen enough of since June. And that's Aquatic Vanguard. Yeah, I'm starting this off with a big one here. Aquatic Vanguard got 3rd in the Alpha bracket in June, but haven't been seen in competitive play since. Now, whether it be scheduling, IRL stuff, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Truth is, now they've had plenty of time to rebuild and improve on what they've built thus far. I think whenever you have a team that kind of just, I don't want to say kind of ruminates, just kind of keeps in themselves. But whenever you do have a team that kind of scrims with them, or not scrims with themselves, but kind of just focuses on improving themselves over and over again. Now that you had 2 months to do so, I think you have something special cooking in there, because remember, this is a lot of time you're spending with your own team, and I've said from personal experience that I've known from personal experience that the more time you spend with your own team, whether it be in Splatoon or in other sports, there's going to be a lot there's going to be a lot of team building you do and a lot of chemistry that you will build just from having that sort of quality time with your team. So, lots to look out for here when it comes to Aquatic Vanguard. I should mention that these teams to watch, and here's a spoiler alert, some of these are in my top 10, but these teams to watch aren't necessarily excluded from my top 10. There's just that reason that I wanted to put them on my teams to watch because I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about them. I will say in the top 10, I do give a little bit more insight as to where I put them, but none of these teams are necessarily excluded from the top 10. I know I usually do that in my low-ink preview, but since there's a lot to talk about here and a lot of info I want to give out on these teams and a lot of thoughts I want to put into them, I did decide to put some of them in my teams to watch. But again, this doesn't necessarily mean they're excluded from the top 10, because the next one that was coming up is Surf and Turf. And I realized if I talked about Surf and Turf and I didn't point that out earlier, it would cause a lot of confusion. Because Surf and Turf, I'm sure we all know where they go in the top 10, but I wanted to point that out now because as soon as I'm reading this, I'm starting to think, okay, someone's going to get worried here. But anyway, Surf and Turf. I'm going to... Again, I made the spoiler alert that they're in the top 10. I think this is the strongest team in low level. Not only because of results, which again I'm going to talk about later, but because of resiliency. You have to, again, I mentioned this earlier, this is a team that has a lot of history together. They've still played, and they're still going in Loink, and they're still going strong. I still think they're the strongest team as a result. This sort of resiliency builds a lot of sort of resiliency, and sharing that sort of struggle with your teammates and sharing that sort of success with your teammates is going to build a lot. I think that, again, sharing that sort of struggle and sharing that sort of success among your team builds that sort of team chemistry, builds that synergy, and now you're pushing yourself to do a little bit more. I think Surf and Turf is a team to look out for, just because I think, again, there's a lot that this team has been through, and there's a lot that this team can succeed with, knowing what they've been through and how much they can succeed, or how much they can win based on how much they have persevered throughout these few days. I did want to also mention Calamity Forge and Neo. That's another team I've been looking out for. Because, and I know actually, looking back at that community standings that I was reading earlier, Calamity Forge Neo is also a team that lots of people are looking into. I think with the sort of advancements Calamity Forge Neo, I'm going to say CFN for short. I'm going to say CFN for short for now, because I think Calamity Forge Neo at some point, I'm going to garble my words, but CFN has been on the rise. I want to say it's not as much of a slow burn, but it's cooking. And I do believe that if there was any point that they were going to make a breakthrough, it's going to be soon, and it's going to be this month. I did want to point out this other team I saw while I was doing my research called One Hit. One Hit, and honestly, I was kind of considering this team for Team 10.5, which, as I'll explain later, a little bit more later, it's kind of the underdog here. But One Hit, I feel like it's a new team. Although there's barely any results on Battlefy. From what I have seen thus far, I think One Hit could be an even sneakier pick than Team 10.5, just because of the amount of or some of the results they've had. Now, I believe, as far as I saw, there was only about 3 or 4 results from One Hit thus far. But One Hit's starting to look like a very sneaky pick, and I'm thinking this is like the one team hiding behind a cloak, maybe even a literal cloak, because they won't even have a Battlefy picture or a logo, which is, eh. But I still think this is one team I have to look out for because I think it's going to be a pretty sneaky pick. Probably push this button. There we go. Another team I wanted to look out for was Z, and Z. Because they're basically Vampire. So I've been looking at Vampire for a while now. Z, as far as I know, and from what I've seen on Battlefield thus far, isn't the same roster as Vampire. But from what I've seen from Vampire, I think Z. I'm just going to say Z. Because I feel like if I keep saying these names, literally, it's going to garble stuff up. But I'm going to say Z. Which, I find they're able to accomplish what they have with that Vampire roster. And obviously they made a few changes from that Vampire roster, which is why they're not playing as Vampire. But I feel like if they can play to the same extent or to the same degree of success that Vampire's been playing, this is another team you would probably watch out for. I'd say if you're in that beta to alpha bracket range, sort of like that alpha bracket contender where they can at least sneak in a few rounds, maybe even play the upset for someone. The only reason I haven't put them in Team 10.5 is because they did play as Vampire again. This is different, little bit of a different roster, a few changes, but still, I still think this is some team that can cause a bit of damage somewhere in the top 10. Go ahead and drink a little bit. Now, before we get into my top 10, I do like to give a few honorable mentions, and I think, if anything, I have 2 Team 11s here. Now, I don't think, by any means, any of these teams should be Team 11. I think it says something when my top 10 has been in the podium within the last 6 months, but my honorable mentions for this month are going to be Eepy Dreepy, Jelly Squids, and Benthic Brigade. Now, they're honorable mentions because I think these teams can do very, very well. Now, the only qualm, it's not really a qualm actually, it's mainly seeing how these rosters do with, like, mainly seeing how these revamped rosters do, rather. I know Eepy Dreepy has made a few changes. One half of it was Black Komodo. They got Bean from Revelation. They got Alice in from KO Calamari. I know Benthic Brigade also made a few changes after Loing June. They did make a few changes to their roster. I want to say the timing was Loing June or July, but they did make a few changes to their roster as well. And as far as I know, Jelly Squids, I want to say they added Tora to the roster. I haven't seen Tora thus far. But even then, Tora Tonit. Anyway, words are hard. But anyway, I think all 3 of these teams should be top 10 contention. And that's why I'm considering them my Team 11. Because I want to see how these rosters do with each other. It's not necessarily that I don't believe they can pick a fight with the top 10. It's mainly just me playing cautiously, me playing boring. And saying, I want to see how these rosters do first, see how they can play with each other. I know for a fact Eepy Dreepy is probably my favorite honorable mention thus far. I still have to give a lot of credit to Jelly Squids and Benthic Brigade. I want to see what they can come up with. But Eepy Dreepy thus far is looking pretty spicy. I've seen the sort of weapon pools they can play, and I think there's a lot of room for creativity there. So, Eepy Dreepy, Jelly Squids, Benthic Brigade, my honorable mentions, and to be honest, my Team 11s. So, with that being said, let's get into the big stuff. The one and only top 10. Now, I will say, keeping with Popcast tradition, because it was very hard for me to take this top 10 or make it a top 6 as I usually do, I kept it as a top 10. And honestly, I feel like I could be proven wrong here. I say that every month, but there are a few teams here that I feel like could make the upsets against one another. For example, I think team number 7. It doesn't help that there's a team here named Team 7, but team number 7 could very well make the upset against any of the ones above them. This top 10, I feel, is probably one of the most stacked top 10 lists I've made whenever I've done these sort of previews. And I think there's a lot of star power here when it comes to like the amount of teams signed up for this month's Low Wing. I think we're in for an exciting one. I think this might be the most competitive Low Wing we see in, I want to say, for a while. But to start us off, number 10 is going to be my personal favorite, and why I mentioned that teams to watch doesn't necessarily mean they're not a top 10. It's going to be Aquatic Vanguard. Now, as I mentioned before, Aquatic Vanguard got 10th place, or not 10th, not 10th place. They are 10th place in this list, but they got 3rd place in Alpha Bracket back in June. So there's no doubting what this team can do. However, they haven't played in competitive for a while. That's not necessarily a bad thing. As I said earlier, this is a time for you to build your confidence with your team. Build the confidence, build the chemistry, build that synergy you need. However, things have changed. I feel like there's a few teams in here, in this top 10, that I probably would have put below Aquatic Vanguard in the past months. But coming into this month, things have changed for Aquatic Vanguard. This is not to say they aren't strong. They can certainly compete, and I believe they'll do it again. But they have to know their key to victory here is going to be to realize that these teams have changed a lot. Some of these teams have gotten much better in the last few months since their third place finish. So there's a lot to look out for with Aquatic Vanguard, and I still think they can compete in as strong as they usually do, even after losing Juice to Up the Ante, which shoutouts Up the Ante being back, but they still have a very strong roster. They still have a very strong 4, and I believe they can still do a lot. Number 9, and this number 9 is why I do my research. I feel like number 9 should have been my Team 10.5 all along. Have you heard of Free Flow? If not, let me give you a few insights as to what Free Flow has done within the last few months, or within the last few weeks, rather. First in the Lantern bracket at SOS 115, second in the Mako bracket 119 back in Wednesday. If you recognize this roster, it is because it is Outcast Ninjas. There's a lot of names here that you'll see that come straight from Outcast Ninjas, which once you see the results, again, that doesn't seem like a surprise. We've seen how well Outcast Ninjas can do in the past. And if you want a little bit more convincing, they have been able to sweep Marine Melody, they've been able to sweep Eepy Dreepy. And sweep Benthic Brigade. And I think, if anything, this is when this team right now is currently the Hunter. But after this month, this team will become the Hunted. Again, this is Outcast Ninjas. There's no surprise as to what they can do, because I know we've seen what they can do in the past. But again, seeing as the teams above them are going to be even stronger than what they've seen thus far, I still expect Free Flow to at least bring some sort of challenge to the rest of the table. But I'm still going to put Free Flow in at number 9. Number 8. Funny thing. When I was writing my top 10, I wrote or teams that could be in my top 10, I wrote down a note that said, I wish My Lag Paradise signed up. The good news is that they did. My Lag Paradise in at number 8. Now, I'm always going to favor beta bracket champions. I think a beta bracket champion has appeared at least once in my top 10, somewhere in my top 10 every single time. I always favor them. Because if you can make this sort of bracket run and you can have this sort of resilience in a bracket, I think you've already got some sort of an advantage against other players or against other teams in the top 10 or other teams or other alpha bracket contenders rather. But if we want to talk about results, 4th in the ladder Squid League. And now this is a ladder event. So if you want to talk about resilience, a ladder event could still be it because ladder events revolve. Man, not doing too good with my pronunciation here. But ladder events is mainly a gauntlet round. There's a lot of resilience that goes into fighting a team and then moving on to another team, then moving on straight to another team. It's almost like a sort of like a bracket run, except there is more likely going to be a team ready for you in front. Now, granted, this was a best of three events, so those matches are going to come and go pretty fast. But I also have to mention that whatever teams they faced in beta bracket may not be as tough as alpha teams this month. Now, of course, this is not a knock on the beta bracket teams they faced. In fact, I was going to place Joke Subbers and Last Wish somewhere around this top 10, or maybe even the honorable mentions if they came back. But I didn't see Joke Subbers or Last Wish, so I've tried to keep them out. But again, this is a very tough top 10. Any other month, I think My Lag Paradise is going to place even higher. But for now, they're number 8. I'm still going to favor them as much as I favor beta bracket champs. And I start to realize that Last Wish, I didn't actually show up because Last Wish is disbanded. I'm like, yeah, of course they didn't sign up, dingus. Anyway. Number 7. It's funny. Number 7 is Team 7. I thought I didn't actually think about it until I didn't think about it until like a few hours before I made this episode. But this is another former podium winner, another runner-up. And my lips are getting dry very quickly. But they returned to play at Minicup, so they do have a little bit more experience in the competitive field, or at least recently. And they actually returned to play. They returned to play at Minicup. They didn't have it easy. They lost to Black in groups. They lost to Surf and Turf at some point. And again, you're going to see me say this over and over again because it's true. This isn't the same field they played against in June. I put Team 7 here because, of course, any team with experience, any team with that sort of experience is going to get some consideration, or at least top 10 consideration. But I think Team 7 goes up just a little bit higher because, again, they have that sort of bracket run experience. They have a lot of... And they have the experience. They have the ability, and they know what they're going up against. Basically, playing against some of these teams, they know what they've got going up against Surf and Turf. So, I think Team 7 placing at 7th is fairly accurate. Again, the only reason they're this low is because this is not the same field they faced in June. I'm going to keep saying this over and over again because it's true. This top 10 is very stacked. Speaking of top 10s, let's follow it up with number 6. You know what I hate about low-level competitive Splatoon? It's when a team says they're going to disband. Now, granted, that's going to happen all the time. Whether it be IRL stuff or maybe this team just isn't working out as much as they wanted it to. Whatever. They just take it out of the picture. But there's something about C Drive that I wanted to see come out of them. There's so much they could have done. And when I saw the announcement that they're going to be disbanding sometime soon, it did hurt. It hurt. Because Seed Drive has so much potential. And then they made another addition to their roster with RPG. And so I'm like, okay, hold on. This team, the more they play, the more they play, and the more they play even with RPG, I still think even if they don't win this month, they're going to contend. And I cannot forget how successful this team has been in the past. Even before all these roster changes, there is a lot this team has done thus far. They've placed almost consistently in most Loinks they've played in, they've placed almost consistently in the top 10. But I think this is going to be their swan song. They have one last bracket run to make. C Drive is still so talented that I believe even if this ends up, when it probably will be their last run, but even if it isn't, even if it is, we cannot forget how successful they've been and how successful they could be here, bringing that sort of experience against these teams. So I'm going to put C Drive in at number 6, and I hope this is the run to remember for him. I hope. Number 5. Let's talk about how much it sucks. Let's talk about how much it sucks to have rough starts in low ink. Galaxy Squids loses round 1 in Alpha Bracket to Equilibrium. In July, they lose round 1 to Surfy Turf. It sucks. Sometimes it just sucks where you started and where you start placing. But don't count them out. I don't focus on these round 1 results. Don't focus on it. I still think this team is going to be stronger than ever. Their resilience has shown mainly in the group stages of Loinks, where they've placed very high among their respective groups. They've shown a lot of they've made a lot of Loink appearances knowing that they have that sort of resilience and they have that strength to keep going and to make an impact on the top roster. Or not the top roster, the top bracket. So there's a lot to show when this team is consistently placing high in the groups, consistently placing high in their low-ink somewhere in their low-ink appearances, making alpha bracket consistently. I think Galaxy Squids is still a team you should look out for, and heading into this low-ink, they do have a little bit of momentum behind them, so I would still put Galaxy Squids within the top 5. Right now it's 5th. But I think Galaxy Squids, even if they don't win this month, they're going to be here to stay. Just because they have that sort of resilience. They have that sort of strength to keep going. Number 4. Ugh. Wow, I am trying out very easily. Maybe I should stop yelling. 5 months ago, Cosmic Cherries won a bracket. Back in March of 2023, Cosmic Cherries won. I believe it was Gamma or Delta bracket. I would look this up earlier, and for some reason I forgot to write it down. But Cosmic Cherries has that sort of bracket experience. So they have won brackets before. They have made deep bracket runs. And if you want to look at recent results, they're even more of a threat. They've beaten teams like Sekunaga and Ikaryoku in SOS pools. They've beaten Dark Masters in June, I believe in the same SOS pools. So they have a lot of group stage success. There's a lot of group stage success that I have seen from this team thus far. Their key to victory here is going to be converting that into bracket success. And they have, well, I mean, obviously they have converted it to bracket success before. But the Cosmic Cherries, again, having that sort of experience to make deep bracket runs and having that sort of group stage set up to where you can put yourself at a higher level, I think the Cosmic Cherries has the perfect combination of those two elements to make that sort of deep bracket run that they are more than capable of making. 5 months ago they did it in one of the lower brackets. They're going to do it again, and quite possibly in the alpha bracket. Cosmic Cherry is coming in as another strong team to look for, putting them at number 4. And now we're down to 3. Chances are you know which 3 teams are coming. Chances are you know which team's number 1. But we have to start off. Every top 3 starts off with number 3. Number 3 being Project Blank. Project Blank, as far as I know, has one objective. They need to make sure, and they need to prove, that 3rd place win versus Surf and Turf last month wasn't a one-time deal. They need to prove that it wasn't just a one-time deal. It wasn't just like, oh, we outplayed them this time. No. Project Blank is here to stay. I think last time I saw them play Coral Clash. They won the bracket. However, looking at the teams they played thus far, maybe it's not convincing enough for a higher spot, although I will say they did beat a revamped Up the Ante team, which is at least worth consideration, knowing that they still have that sort of momentum coming into this next month, or this next Lowink. So there's still a lot to consider with Project Blank, but their one objective is making sure everyone knows that 3rd place win against Surf and Turf wasn't just a one-time deal, that they can play at that higher level, and they can easily take the number 1 spot this month. If they can beat a team like Surf and Turf like that, and do it consistently over the tournament, this is an easy win for them. And it's very easy too, considering who number 2 is. Number 2 being the same team that beat them in placements. Kubara 2 euros. 2 euros? 2 euros. Depending on if you want the Spanish or English pronunciation. But 2nd place irony here, because this team's placed 2nd in my list, and they placed 2nd place last month. Splatoon's a rough game, dude. Splatoon is very rough. And this is, if anything, this is the same team. Like, I've seen a bit of Inked in this one. I remember there was a time when Inked was considered in constant appearance in the top 3, top 5 of people's top 10s. Whenever people made top 10 predictions back in the olden days of Splatoon 2, they have that sort of reminiscence of them. This is like deja vu here. Now, obviously, Kubata 2 euros hasn't played in as many Loinks to have that many appearances, but there's no reason they shouldn't win here. I mean, this is a team that went the distance with 8k ping, making it very close. That's 4-3 we're talking about. That's not something you easily pass up, especially against a team that you are striving to be at the same level as. You want to be Loink Band, you're going to play like a Loink Band team, and they did so last month in Grand Finals when they went 4-3, taking 8k ping the distance. However, it is 2nd place irony. I hope there is no such thing as a 2nd place curse. But again, there's no reason this team shouldn't break that curse if it is just happens to be real. Kubata 2 euros, consider it a number 2 team. I think we know who number 1 is. So go ahead and say it with me. Number 1 is Surf and Turf. Congratulations, we guessed right. Whoever that was on Twitter, I know someone replied to me on Twitter. I think it was Ultra Yeats. Whoever said, yeah, Nito, Surf and Turf's number 1. Yeah, you're right. There's not much in hiding it. I mean, the one key to success for Surf and Turf here is do not let last month haunt you. Don't. I understand. You lost the 3rd place matchup against Project Blank. But even then, don't let it haunt you. Look at all the results you've gotten thus far. And especially I think, just from what all the research I've done, this team has the strongest results since Lowink JLI from any of the top 10 teams I've been researching thus far. I mean, there's not often that you see a Lowink team qualify for Great White. That in itself deserves a lot of merit. And then there's also the fact that you have a back-to-back Minnow Cup champion right here in Surf and Turf. And there's also the fact that the whole scene is the whole competitive scene so far is behind this team. This is all set up for Surf and Turf to do something great here. They finally have all the keys to success here. They have the momentum, they have the experience. Even if you lose round 1 of Great White, you still have the experience of playing against those sort of top level teams. I'm always going to value that when it comes to low level Splatoon. Any team that goes out of their way to keep fighting these top level players and get themselves into positions to where they fight top level players is going to get my respect. Surf and Turf, I'm sure you all saw it coming. I saw it coming. That's why I wrote it down here. They're number 1 because they're one of the strongest teams heading into this. Strongest results heading into Lowing. Surf and Turf is an easy number 1 from me, and I'm sure from the rest of you as well. With that being said, you all know that my Lowing previews never end at number 1. There's always a team that I consider to be a sort of dark horse, the underdog. Team 5.5. It was Team 6.5. Now it's 10.5. There's always a team that, they may not look like it yet, but I think this team can at the very least pull off an upset to one of these top 10. And I think Team 10.5 is going to be Permafrost. Now, when I was doing a little bit of research on Permafrost, it was funny because the farther I looked, the more I realized this team only plays Swimmer Sync. Now, obviously, that's not true. Now, some of these results are going to be from SAC. Some of them are also from other tournaments. But that's the funny part, though. When you only play Swimmer Sync, you're going to get some variance in results. And that sort of variance might worry you in terms of consistency, but I've seen some pretty nice results here. They win against Sekinaga to win the Lantern bracket at SOS 118, but then they lose to 1989 in the Mako bracket finals in the next week. So, but considering what I've said thus far, they've seen all sorts of skill levels in unskill cap tournaments, or not skill cap tournaments. They've been playing SOS over and over and over again. They have an SAZ result as well, which, I mean, I still want to say that this team only plays SOS because it was very funny looking through that Battle Phi. But all of this comes together for me to say, what can this team do in a skill cap tournament? Now, let's take away the fact that you've played against Sekinaga before. You played against all these top level teams. There's variance in your results because of that. What if you play in Lowing? I believe this is their first tournament. I did see a previous Lowing result as the captain, but this is their first Lowing playing as Permafrost. So now that you have all this variances in results, what can you do now that you have a skill cap tournament? Now that everyone's going to be at about the same level as you don't have to worry about facing Sekinaga. You don't have to worry about facing Triggerfish Zone Supremacy in the bracket like you did in SAC. You don't have to worry about facing those sort of top level teams, but you have before. You have played against these teams, but now you're playing against low level teams, and that's all you're going to be playing against. I think this team has nothing to lose heading into this. I'm always going to favor teams that play outside of Lowing, but especially this one because they haven't played anything. They played everything except Lowing. So when you head into Lowing with basically nothing to lose because this is your only result here, I think this team has a lot to play for. And I think this team is going to be one we're looking at even straight out of day one. We might see this team get somewhere. This team might struggle, get 4-2, barely creep up in the alpha bracket. This team could get 6-0, completely destroy their groups, and just head straight into the alpha and straight into top 32. But yeah, anyway, I think this team has a lot to make up for, and not to make up for. This team has a lot to make up in terms of like what they can do and what sort of tournament play they can it's what sort of play they can make in this sort of tournament where everyone's going to be playing at the same level as them. They no longer have to face that sort of variance. So I think Permafrost is going to be my sneaky little team 10.5 pick, because there's a lot that I think this team can achieve getting put in this sort of situation. And with that said, that is going to be it from our long preview. From my long preview, at least. I know Rose from Octopi made a little community rankings. I do want to add that in the chat later on, or at least retweet it on my Twitter account. But there's a lot to look out for in this low rank. I think it's probably going to be one of the most stacked tournaments I've ever seen. There's a lot of competition between this top 10 here. So lots to look out for this low rank. I think it's going to be a very fun one to watch. I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out for it. But that's going to be it from me. And if you want to take a look at some of our socials, you can follow Popgun here. It's this VOD is also... There we go. The VODs are going to be here at the YouTube channel. Discord's going to be here as well. To follow Mr. Popgun on Twitter. If you want to follow me, I'm going to be Nito Unused on, I guess, X now. Who cares? It's still Twitter. I'm going to be Nito Splat on Twitch in the rare occasion that I do stream, which I'm planning on doing sooner. But apart from that, hope all of you stay well. And if you'd like to be a part of the Popcast in any way, like I said, follow these socials. Follow Mr. Popkin on Twitter and on YouTube. You can find all the VODs there. If you want to follow me as well, I've plugged all of my socials there as well. Let's go and find somebody to raid. I'm going to look at chat real quick, though. I refuse to call it X. It's Twitter. There we go. That's all I need to see. Let's go ahead and find somebody to raid. I think Level Up is going to be popping up soon. Level Up being a Div 4 to Div 2 tournament. Something I've actually participated in. I think it's very fun to watch. But Level Up is going to be playing sometime soon. We're going to find out. Otherwise, I think we may... If I can't find it, we might actually raid Kyo-chan, because Kyo-chan's online right now. I know they have a stream somewhere. Nope. Oh well. I'm gonna raid Kyo-chan. Let's go ahead and set that raid up. And we'll see y'all there. Go ahead and stay safe, guys. Have a good weekend. Hope to see y'all in chat. But until then, have a good one. Start that.